So that is what history is. Negative or positive, it makes us who we are, and without it, we are nothing. And even if at times you look at your history and you don't like your history, it inspires you to make some changes. And you make those changes because of your history. Now, we've talked about this plenty of times. History is nothing but, you find yourself at a certain location, geographically speaking, a certain temperament, certain parents, certain time in history, and life just, throws you things. And depending on your background, you can either interpret them as negative or positive. It's really all about interpretation. And to be able to kind of transform something negative into positive, you need a good amount of tools. It's really like remodeling a house built of ideas and emotions and those things. Unfortunately, history creates, I suppose, two different categories of people, maybe even three. There are those who have power, there are those who don't have power, and there are those who just don't care. And I suppose you could say that those who don't care, it's either because they've tried, and they weren't really successful, they just gave up. It's like sour grapes in Aesop's fable, for those of you who know the story. It's about this fox. Foxes are known to be cunning and clever and conniving. And this particular fox loves grapes. And as he is walking, he looks to his right and he sees some grapes, but there's a fence that's in the middle. And so he tries to jump over it. He can't, the fence is too high. And so he puts his hand through the fence, but the grapes happen to be at a distance. So it doesn't matter how much he tries. After 5, 6, 7 hours, he just gives up. So remember, he sees the grapes, attraction is created. He begins to go back in time, and like Dionysus in the Greek world, he loved grapes. So he ate a lot of grapes and then laid in the sun, and then the heat of the sun hits his belly and it turns into wine. And then Dionysus is known to be an entity that's always intoxicated. And so the Greeks worshipped him. They had sex because of him. And they believed that because of Dionysus and because of sex and because of intoxication, they can actually touch God. So after a while, when the fox comes to realize that he can't get any grapes, he walks away from the whole thing saying, they're probably sour anyways, they're not ripe yet. So the gods actually liked me, because had I reached the grapes and had I eaten those grapes, I would have suffered stomachache. And so his incompetence all of a sudden is transformed into something of divine intervention, that the gods desired for me not to get sick. And so that's the reason for me having short arms, I suppose. Now, so some people can become passive because they've tried to correct history or certain events, but to no avail, so they just give up. Now, if you're oppressed, you look at those who are the oppressors. If you're poor, you look at those who are rich. And you're not a monk, you're not content, you're young, you lack experience, you don't have enough life inside you. And so because you're poor and you look at things that other people have but you want, but you can't have because you don't have the resources, you become jealous, you become envious, you become resentful, you even become angry. And then, of course, you create a revolutionary cult, and then you have an uprising, because you're about justice and fairness and all that. So at any rate, history creates two categories or two sets of people, the oppressors and the oppressed. And it could be your brother. He was born and he is gifted to play the piano. You, on the other hand, you sit back, you look at him and you want to learn how to play the piano, but you just don't have the talent. And so you envy him, you resent him, your parents favor him, and so you feel unloved. That makes a good amount of isolation, loneliness. And so you try to pick fights with your brother to destroy him in some shape or form. Maybe while he's asleep, get a saw and just chop off his arms. Who the hell knows how violent and despicable you are. So then the question is, well, how does one become the oppressor and how does one become the oppressed? Some are biological, some are natural, some are organic. I would love to be like Brad Pitt, look like Brad Pitt, walk around and have people follow me, pursue me, harass me, stalk me, so I can call the cops, so I can be on YouTube, so I can be on Instagram, so I can be on Oprah Winfrey show. I look at myself and I look beastly. I look at Brad Pitt and he is beautiful. Now, the truth is, there isn't much I can do about that. Unless I have a good amount of money, I can put my face under, knives, some surgeons out there, so they can make me look like Michael Jackson. So I could compete with Brad Pitt. So there are some aspects of being oppressed and being the oppressor, which is just natural and organic, and there isn't much you can do. But it takes a good amount of time to pass for you to accept the fact that your brother is just a genius at the piano and you suck at everything you touch. And though your brother figured out what he wants to do at the age of 5, you're a late bloomer. So you're gonna figure things out when you're 45. But by the time you get there, you probably have destroyed your relationship with your brother, with your parents, until you find an anchor. You say, well, I'm just a good cook. Maybe I'm just a good father. Maybe I can just run well. Who the hell knows what you're good at? Or maybe you're just mediocre. You're not really good at anything, but you have this great talent where you've come to accept, I suppose, defeat in some ways. You come to realize that nature is unjust. It makes someone 6'5" and they become Michael Jordan, and it makes you 5'2" and you can barely walk. And that's the way it is, and it takes you 20 years to come to accept the gifts and the curses of life. There are some aspects of being oppressed and being the oppressor, which is human-made. I suppose you may want to ask, why do human beings desire to oppress other people? For lots of reasons. Some oppressions are actually quite good. If you want to learn the piano, and I am a good piano teacher, it is good for me to oppress you. It is good for me to spank you whenever you watch too much TV, or you hang out with your friends and drink too much and smoke too much and just goof around, because then you're just wasting your talent. So I will oppress you. I will cause fear inside you. And that particular oppression benefits your growth, at least when it comes to playing the piano. That oppression is really good. There is another aspect of oppression, which is we have no choice but to oppress each other. Is my position about life and all the things we talk about right? I don't know. I think so. You may not think so. But the problem is society gives me power, and society removes power from you. You're the student, I'm the instructor. You don't grade me, I grade you. And so I assume that my position is right, and every time your hand goes up and some words come out of your mouth, I beat you up intellectually. And after a while, you realize you're no match. And so the only refuge you have is just keeping your mouth shut. And it may be that as time passes, that you will come to understand perhaps my wisdom or my foolishness. That depends on you, that depends on time, all sorts of things. I don't know if you're just biologically and psychologically wired to be violent because of our history that goes back a couple million years. Life is tough. There are no Safeways, there are no Costco's. No one lives to be 50 or 60 or 70. Everybody dies by the time they're 30. You can't have any power over life, not even a toothache. If you have, eventually it'll kill you. And so you have to claim ownership to everything and anything. There is lust inside us, there is greed inside us, and these are just natural. It takes a Jesus Christ to go into the desert to refine his interior until he's no longer a human being with the sort of pathetic desires and temptations that befall us. He is something very, very different, like Malcolm X. I don't know how or why he walked away from power. That's a miraculous place to be, that most of us really can't get there in a few lifetimes even.